Welcome to Snow Talk, where the Snow and Ice Management Association brings you trends, stories, news, and personalities that are shaping the professional snow and ice management industry. This season of Snow Talk is sponsored by Western Snowplows and Fisher Engineering. So settle in and let's talk snow.
When you plow snow for a living, minutes wasted is money lost. That's why at Western, our plows are built for toughness and efficiency, like the Wideout and Wideout XL. Steel blades up to 11 feet wide with independently controlled flared wings, so you can extend, retract, windrow, or scoop at the touch of a button. Because building superior equipment is the only way to keep our promise. More jobs done faster.
Welcome to Snow Talk, a podcast powered by SIMA, where we dig into business, science, and people behind the snow and ice management industry. I'm your host for today's episode, Evan Newman. Today, we're diving into one of the trickiest markets in North America when it comes to snow, and that's the Mid-Atlantic snow market. From Washington, D.C. to Northern Virginia and through Baltimore, this region gets just enough winter weather to require professional snow management, but not enough consistency to make it easy. We'll explore what makes this market unique, how contractors manage unpredictable snowfall, and of course, how clients often struggle to understand the value of snow readiness when the white stuff might start to show its ugly face. So joining me today on the podcast are Mr. Steve Mruk of Potomac Lawns, LLC, based in La Plata, Maryland, and Mike McCarron of ImageWorks Landscaping in Fairfax Station, Virginia. Both have years of experience working in the Mid-Atlantic region and know firsthand how to balance preparation with practicality in a market that might get 3 or 15 or 20 inches of snow. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's get started with a painting of the picture of the DC metro area, as we'll call it, the Mid-Atlantic market. What makes snow operations here so different for you guys? But before we jump into that question, hello, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you guys for joining me. And what makes it so difficult to operate in this area? Obviously, the green side of your business is probably something that's been a staple within your market for some time. But snow is one of those things that come and go. I know that I've been to DC with my wife for family and friends, and snow starts falling, and the whole area shuts down. So, what makes it difficult for you? But what makes it exciting for you compared to a Midwest or Northeast market?
So we're right outside Washington, D.C. We're about 25 minutes away from the White House. We have heavy traffic, a lot of congestion here. And what makes part of it really difficult is it's just like anytime you're near a huge major city, there are certain times when traffic flows and there are certain times when traffic sits still. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the problems come into play is that you know, everyone goes into Washington, D.C. for work or in the Northern Virginia area, and then they go in a certain time, they come out at a certain time. And so those time frames create a lot of congestion, a lot of inability to move teams and crews. The other problem is you have elementary, middle school, and high school all starting an hour apart. So you have a 7:30, you have an 8:30, you have a 9:15 start time in the morning for all the schools, and then they get out respectively in the afternoon at like 2:20, 3:45, and 4:15. So all the schools create huge traffic blocks in and out, and the government and all the contractors working in Washington going in and out. So the ability to mobilize your teams and get them in the right places at the right time creates a huge traffic issue for us that we always have to be thinking way ahead of. So that also, we have parts of 95 here, not too far from our shop, is considered some of the most congested and most dangerous parts accident-wise. 95 corridor from basically upper New York all the way down to Florida. Part of that section of the most dangerous part of 95 is pretty close to our shop, which creates jam ups all in itself.
Interesting.
Yeah. I would agree with Mike there. We're in the same market, but we're really in different markets, honestly. Mm-hmm. Mike and I think we're 30 miles apart maybe, but completely different markets. I'm a little bit further south in the Maryland side of things. A little bit more rural area, if you will. Even though he only has to go, say, 3 miles, it still may take us the same amount of time. He has more traffic per se than us a lot of times. So definitely traffic is an issue anywhere you go. So it depends on the client's needs, what time we need to be there, what time the storm's doing, So there's many challenges involved in this market area. So, and we also have plenty of government employees that travel and others that travel to DC for work as well. So, just not as probably as congested, I think, as the Fairfax area or even that right around inside the Beltway area too.
Mm-hmm. And Steve, when we talked about hosting this podcast a few weeks back and what kind of topics we could cover, you and I talked a lot about inconsistency and how that comes back to how not only you as a contractor budget and plan, but how your customers budget and plan. You can't just justify the same level of investment in equipment or labor if you only see 4 to 5 plowable events, or you may have to invest more if you're trying to get people out the door quickly in some of these high pressure, high zone, high touch areas that you guys kind of just covered that may set you back as a result of this bottlenecking that occurs. Steve, what kind of things have you put in place to help your company, the foresight and budget awareness to kind of get a plan together for not only the finances side, but the people side of your business?
Well, training is number one factor there. Training your crew on things there. SEMA does have a great training program. I think it's top notch. As far as going over, it's great to be able to outline with the crews there. And then you can add your own touch to things. There are some specialty things that you need to worry about depending on the client's locations. We do some healthcare places that have a zero tolerance to industrial places to, retail. Mainly our mix is just, commercial side, very little residential on there. So the challenges are depending, is this client open today? Is this one closed? So you do have to adapt the schedule according to the client and the needs and what the conditions are. As far as equipment goes, we've been doing it for a while, so we kind of have everything we need in regards to that. We have just started using liquids last year, and Mike's been a big help in regards to that. So we thank him for that on things.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And that's a good kind of transition here too, is what kind of technologies, what kind of opportunities are we taking a look at to address the icing concerns? Because in a market like the Mid-Atlantic, you may not see as much in the way of snow and snowfall totals, but you're going to see some de-icing events that are needed. And your clients have an expectation that you're going to be boots on the ground and ready to roll just in the same way that you would be for a snow event.
And we document photos and we can send those to clients if they need to. Some of them have cameras already on site so they can see what is going on, and obviously GPS in the trucks on things. That's a must have. I think should be a standard practice for any contractor, for your insurance purposes, liability, and if you need to go back and check on anything. I think that definitely should be a standard practice, as well as the photos, after you're done and completed with the sites.
That's awesome. Mike, Steve, tell me a little bit about this relationship that you guys have had over the years, but also with this new development of saying, okay, we're adding some liquids into our fleet. How can you help? And Mike, how long have you kind of been in the game and working with Steve on something like this?
Yeah. So to answer the first part of your question, we got into liquids. Probably 2011. We experimented with it for several years. No one else in our market was doing it at the time. We slowly worked with a couple of different manufacturers, running a couple of different pieces of equipment before we fine-tuned it, developed our own sprayer technology, and then started making our own brine here in-house. So we've been working on fine-tuning that for years. We kind of saw the writing on the wall with Chesapeake Bay watershed near us. EPA, obviously, right around the corner from our shop too, as well. So I'm well adversed in doing that and in using it. I had the opportunity to work with Steve 2 years ago, and we've been great friends since then. And I've been trying to help him get into liquids and get out in front of it and learn it and try it, experiment with it. Because sooner or later, that part of Maryland where he is down there on the water side, the regulations, it's just a matter of time before it's going to change down there. So we worked together at Arlington National Cemetery too as well. And it's been a great relationship. I'm glad to help him. And it's worked out well. More people are involved. More people are raising the bar on professionalism, EPA awareness, watershed. From us, it's more a watershed issue. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's really driving it in the Northern Virginia market, in part of DC where he is. He's just right over the line from me. Obviously, different state, different regulations, though. but we're both battling the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So we're both working towards reduction in salt use and raising the level of professionalism.
Steve, what have been your takeaways with moving into some liquid uses? And was it a client request? Was it just something you were looking to add into your fleet? And how have clients responded to some of it if it wasn't their request?
This is something I've wanted to do for a number of years, and just trying to find the right entry, if you will, into this side of things there. It's not something specific that any of our clients have requested. They're pretty, lenient on they use our best judgment, I should say, for products to use and when to use things. But what it has been very valuable for is especially the entranceways. It's not tracking the entranceways up with a bunch of rock salt or whatever else you may be using, combination products. So the client is definitely much happier with that on there. And it has been a learning curve, and I kind of wish I had started it sooner. It's one of those things I put off for a little bit, not knowing enough about it. And we did have a few years, I think 3 to 4 years, where we didn't really have any snow. So it kind of went on the back burner for us, or, for me anyway. Now we're back into, I guess getting a little bit more regular snow or snow and ice stuff. And it was just time to try it. We have the equipment and the trucks to do it, and talking with Mike and meeting up with him and, his expertise there, it's been a big help. It's the right tool for the right job. Not always, but, it's another tool and toolbox, if you will.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I hear that a lot across the country and in some of the peer groups I have the opportunity to facilitate on behalf of SIMA, is that a lot of folks are even going to this, and commercial clients are starting to ask for these things, maybe not from the sustainability perspective. Some of them are. And of course, it's nice for their reports and ESG guidelines, if you will. But some are asking for these things because they're saying, hey, my light poles are eroding. My doorways are rusting out. I'm having to replace doors every 3 to 5 years as a result of the impact of salt. So people on the other side, the customer, are starting to wake up to the opportunity to protect their infrastructure. So that's exciting stuff. Mike, anything you want to add there, since you've been in the game for a bit longer, before we transition over into some equipment readiness?
I think one of the big takeaways could be for your listeners of this podcast is that when you pre-treat a property 24, 48 hours before a storm, the client at that point realizes that you're serious, you're ready, your team is already, in position, you've already got the property under control. So, for example, if we're going to get a snowstorm tomorrow, and we have everything pre-treated by dinner time tonight, and we can see the property's taken care of, it's sprayed, it's ready. When everyone comes home in the community, it doesn't matter if you do condos, HOA, commercial, whatever type of work you do, the client and the people there know you're ahead of it, and know you're on top of it, and you're being proactive with it. That really, really calmed a lot of the complaints, anxiety. Are they going to show up? Are they really going to be here? All that kind of stuff. So we started pre-treating a lot of properties years and years ago, and they could see all the lines. They could clearly see we were there. They knew we had it taken care of. It really dropped our phone calls off and our complaints way off. Which is good, because they realized you were there, you were good to go, and you're already ready. Mm-hmm. So not only you talk about the environmental impact, let's talk about the customer service and the client understanding of whether your company is ready and you're being proactive and you're on top of your game. And the pre-treating a day or two before a storm really took us to that next level, and it really calmed things down quite a bit, which was good. So that was a unforeseen benefit, I guess, of doing liquids too as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned client expectations. Let's talk about the unpredictability, how that affects how you sell snow. Do most clients in your region prefer per push contracts, or are they looking at seasonal options or all-inclusive models? What kind of contracts, what kind of agreements are they looking towards, or is it a mixed bag, and does that make it difficult to diversify your portfolio? Steve, I'll start with you.
It's really unique, I think, here. There are some fixed fees for the season. That's kind of a hit or miss depending on the client there. Since we're in that area where we may or may not get it. Some may not commit to it like they would say in upstate, maybe New York or the Mid-Atlantic up that way. But, you also have hourly and per push. I think those are the two most common down here. The seasonal contract is probably the third in line. Not as many of them out there, but they are, depending on the client, it's something they may want to choose and their budget needs. We have other clients that just, hey, whatever it is, we'll just pay it as we go on things. We're not worried about it. It just depends on the client's needs, and we try and adapt as much as we can to them, as well as to keep, things within our own budget as kind of diversified, depending on how much snow we would get for the season. It's nice to have a couple seasonals in there for cash flow purposes, but, you can also lose if you're not careful with that as well.
Good points. Mike, what about you? What are you kind of seeing? I know you're only 30 miles maybe north. Is it a similar bag, or are there more challenges or opportunities with some of these government sites or places near government sites that are working with?
Steve brings up a good point. So one of the biggest issues that we're seeing right now is that we went almost 2 years. I think the news was bragging. It almost clicked over the 800-day mark before you had any significant pushable snow. Mm-hmm. And what that caused a lot of not only building owners, but property managers to say, hey, I don't want to get locked into a seasonal contract when we went 2 years back to back without any big plowable snow. Uh-huh. And so they started getting gun shy and started saying, okay, it's weird. Our market historically has been a per hour or per push event. We don't really have seasonal contracts down here, just simply we just don't have the amount of outings that you do from like Baltimore up through Connecticut and up north, and obviously up in the upper section of the United States. So we've traditionally been a per hour or per push market. And then you top that off with 2 years of no real significant snowfall. That just allowed the business owners, the property owners of the facilities, and the account managers to say, hey, let's back down this snow as much as we can because we might not get anything again. And that's what caused this kind of weird mix of different services. Now, I have friends that live up north. They've gone out 30 times a year. I can't even tell you how many years. They're all per season, per push. Those contracts work out great. Their contracts up there, like our mowing contracts down here, 32 to 36 visits. They're guaranteed, no worries. Their snow is that way. Our grounds is that way down here. Uh-huh. So it just caused a little bit of a change. And obviously the 2 years that really just kind of pushed it to make these people try to save as much money and almost at times act like snow doesn't even exist. Huh. And so it's a constant challenge to educate the customer. What if they never think we're going to get the big one? We're never going to get a 12 to 15 inch event. You're going to need loaders. You're going to need all kinds of other things. They don't even think in that world because they just haven't really experienced. We haven't really experienced that down here in a while. So people forget about it. But us as a company, you got to be prepared if the big one hits. And it can happen.
Yeah, 2010, back-to-back 20-inch storms, a week and a half apart. So it's been a while since we've had those. And like Mike said, they get a little gun shy, and I understand, from their side, why set money aside for this, but you also have to still be prepared in case it does happen. And I don't think some of them are prepared, or they get, a large bill they weren't expecting. It's like, where do we get the money from now? Like, how do we pay this bill? And then ultimately comes back on us because they may not pay in a timely fashion and drag it out, so forth there, or look for ways to reduce the payment somehow on there. And there's really not a lot of room that we have to reduce the payment on things. I mean, we've provided the service, we've provided the material, we've bought the equipment, we've had to foot that bill out front for them. So
I'll chime in on that real quick too. Part of the problem is everyone expects us to be firefighters, right? As soon as the first snowflake starts to fall, the bay doors go open and all the trucks come out and with the lights on and everyone's ready. And we've all been sitting there waiting for 10 and a half months for it to snow. And, the insurance company, all the stocking, the materials, just getting ready equipment wise is a huge undertaking. There's a cost associated with that. But unfortunately on the client end, the second it snows, they expect the bay doors to go up and everyone to fly out and be ready like we've been waiting years for this. Right. And that's tricky sometimes when you have a couple of years of low snow.
And especially when they're pushing for, no pun intended, when they're pushing for a per push or a per contract or an emergency contract that then doesn't incentivize you to potentially have that ready. It's just that you both and your companies and probably some of your peers are just professionals and you take your job seriously and you want to go out.
Your team is not acclimated as much as well. But if you haven't pushed snow in 2 or 3 years, you can do some training, but that's got to be repetitive. You know what I mean? And the first push might be a little rough for some people if you haven't done it in a while, and it takes everybody to get back into that groove of things, myself included on things. I'm human just like everybody. So it does pose some challenges there when you haven't had snow for a number of years in a certain market on things. Or maybe you've gotten some new clients and what you thought was supposed to be, something quick and easy turns out not to be so quick and easy because of other factors out of your control. The travel time for us sometimes, we get stuck behind a plow train from the state highway, and it might take us a lot longer to get there because, we're not going to go past them, but, it's other things like out of our control.
Evan, you're right. Part's a mental block too. Mm-hmm. Like down here, they're saying the property manager, the business owners focus 95% on the grounds, 5% on the snow. Right. You get a little bit further north and it becomes 75-25. You get up New York City and above, it's 60-40. You get up above Connecticut, you get into Massachusetts, it's almost 70-30, where 70% of the talk in the conversations about snow and grounds and winter work, and only 30% they're talking about. I mean, the 70% winter services, 30% summer and ground services, and the property manager's priority moves more and more towards snow. I mean, there are very few, if I can even count on one hand in my area, companies that just do snow. It's not a reputable business model with unpredictability down here. If you get north of Connecticut, you get into the upper states, you get all the way up over in areas Colorado and all that. There are 60 to 100 inches. A deep upper New York. Those snow-only companies up there do really well, very profitable, very successful, because the outlay of where they are works. And so the property managers kind of base their mental behavior on the snow you get according to your market too. So property managers and business owners, kind of where me and Steve are, the snow is not really that high of a priority for them in general conversation. Let me put it that way.
It's only a high priority when they're getting phone calls as to why it's not open. Then you hear from them.
This is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation, though, because snow climates do change and people do deal with these things completely differently. I talk to folks, ironically, in the Pacific Northwest that are in a similar situation to you all, where they're not getting a ton of snow, but they get a lot of de-icing events and opportunities to address those. So how are they building a business model that works for them? I think it's important to have these conversations, giving folks a picture of, hey, these are snow businesses that have to plan and do things completely different, because it isn't a 60-40 or 80-20 split. It is it's a 30-70 if they're lucky. So that comes to my next kind of block of questions around labor and equipment and readiness. Steve, you kind of mentioned, man, it's getting the team sharp and ready for the next big storm can be difficult, especially when you're not expecting it. We mentioned earlier, if you want to get into de-icing, it's great to be able to show that you're proactive and you're professional and you're leaving evidence of the work that you're doing, but also maybe giving your team a little extra lead time if you're able to get out and spray those properties, and spray those entryways. But on the flip side, if it's a 30-70 split, how do you stay ready in the market where snow might come late or not at all? How do you justify keeping full-time year-round staff versus seasonal staff, or brine and salt and equipment on standby, and what are some of the strategies that you all use to make sure that you're lean but efficient and ready for the storm too?
Well, good question. So as far as our team goes, a lot of the sites that we service, we also do the grounds maintenance on it. So we're familiar with the locations, the lots, and everything there. And we've kind of kept up on, where things are, and noted, other items throughout the summer. If there's some damage or something like that, or something needs to be replaced, we'll bring it to the client's attention. The speed bumps being one, let's say, maybe it got hit by something. We have one client that poured a bunch of them, and the dump trucks have torn them up. And so, they're aware of that. But we do the snow stakes, we walk the properties with it, and the guys know where things are. The summer resources as far as the maps of where to, stacking snow and getting all those resources together for people. Definitely super helpful for our team. In going over things, how to hook things up, where to pile, where not to pile. Is this customer have a special request this year because maybe they have construction going on, so maybe we can't put something there. So that's kind of how we address most of those issues there. Equipment wise, at the end of the season, we go through everything. We try and keep it as ready as possible on there, and what spare parts that that are common that we may need. Material wise, we kind of see what we're going to use. We definitely have enough for the first couple events in there, and that may be out of the budget from last year. We had some product left over. Maybe it's out of this year's budget on there that we've set aside for, some of those products. We try and keep our equipment in tip-top shape as best of our ability there. And stay up with newer technology if we can and if and when those products come out. I know the snow industry is getting a little bit more proactive and a little bit more technology-oriented on things there, such as some of the salt spreaders that are calibrated with speed for your usage and so forth, which was really nice on things. So,
Mike, what are you seeing with your equipment? Are you using a lot of it in the green space, but also in the white space? Do you have certain white specific equipment? And then I think Steve picked up on a really good point, and it's client communication. So if they've signed on, they want to be a client. What not only expectations, but I guess what communication should we be covering to make sure we're aware of those speed bumps or those changes to a property? Of course, you guys as professionals are probably going out, walking the property a few times before the big storm, but are there any lines of communication that may need to be opened?
Yeah, so and similar to Steve's market, we still have a handful that are not green clients too, but we are working very hard to make sure our summer clients and our winter clients are the same. So we try to do snow services on the properties that we're selling grounds maintenance for. Anytime your employees have the opportunity to mow and touch every inch of that property for 8 or 9 months or 10 months, then when it comes around to snow, they already know the property really well. They know every nook and cranny. They've edged all the sidewalks or blown off the curbs for 8 or 9, 10 months. They know the property really well. Anytime you can tie in a grounds contract with a snow contract in my market, it becomes a 12-month relationship. We try to hug the client a little bit more. It keeps the relationship in a better place. Plus, keeps your guys working on jobs that they already know. That's huge too as well. It cuts down on some of your training and allows both of those two to kind of intersect between November and December. When you go into the tail part, like right where we are right now, from now to Christmas, we're in a huge leaf rush right now. And then that'll switch over and go straight into snow all the way through till end of February, beginning of March. And then it flips right over and goes right back into ground maintenance. So we try to look at what's called a load level. I try not to overbook my company. This has been a internal ticker for us for a long time. How much capacity do we want to take on? We get a lot of calls from snow to do snow only work. We just got a call to do a pretty big sized church. It's, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 minutes away from our shop. They're not interested in giving us any grounds. And then we say, okay, do we want to use any of our available bandwidth for that property? Especially if our business developer sells another big contract. It's a year-long contract that we have grounds on. We need to be using our snow resources to keep that 12-month relationship, just for the sake of being busy during the winter. So you got to really be careful, because down here you can get overcommitted really quick. And we have some properties that are 600-700 parking spots, but only have 1 or 2, 3,000 square foot of turf. Some of these shopping centers and whatnot, where it's not very much to mow them, but the people that mow them can't do the snow on them. Because it takes 3 or 4 trucks to do the snow. So then you get all these wild calls. We want to keep their grounds guy, but they don't want to flip to snow to you. So you got to kind of really watch that load leveling. I can't emphasize that enough. Find out what your capacity. We try to run between 80 and 83, 85% capacity. So if we sell something new, we have bandwidth to deal with it, which is a win-win. If we sell a big contract in November, December for the following year, we can handle the snow. Also, if you get the big ones, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 inches, you get a 2.5, 3-day storm that just drags on, you've got depth on the bench to be able to handle it. If you're already at 100% capacity and you've already overpromised, it's just not going to end well. So we've really worked hard on doing that. Last part of that question: how much material to carry, how much salt brine to have in stock, what's good enough to get through the first 1 or 2 rounds. We try to always have almost 2 rounds full of material, on-site fuel, on-site brine, ready to go, so we can click through 1 or 2 storms before we have to worry about restocking or firing up our brine machine again. That way we're not, so tight to the edge that if we get back-to-back storms in the same week, we're screwed. We have enough depth on the bench to handle that too as well.
Yeah, I'll add to Mike's there with that stuff. Depending on the vendors, getting it to what you could get in 2 to 3 days may take a week. Then something hits the Mid-Atlantic region, and it's heavier up north. Well, we might not be able to get the product down, in the next, say, 3 days or something, as typical from some of our vendors. It might take 7 days to get it. It might take a week to get it, depending on the product you're looking for and what the conditions are up north on things. There are definitely a lot of challenges in there involved in it. And even looking at in some of the contracts out there, and especially with the national property management companies, if you will, and the low price. I've seen prices lower now on some products or sites than they were in 2022, and even going back to 2018, prices lower now than then. It's like a race to the bottom. Sometimes you just got to say no. And I know some contractors just take every contract they can get, and that's not a really good way to do things, I don't think. As Mike said, you got to look at that capacity, and you got to plan for the worst case, scenario where you have that 3-day storm. And I don't think some of these contractors have gotten to that point where they've had it, where everyone is calling and saying, hey, where are you at? And canceling on them. They haven't felt that yet. And eventually they will on there, and they'll understand. But I think some of that greed, I hate to say, gets the best of them on there. I would rather have a great reputation with our clients and know that we provided a great service and be a couple dollars short than to make a couple dollars more and have a bad name.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. It was something we talked about in building out these questions. And there's definitely a pendulum swing when it comes to weather. There's times where we're going to get more snow in every part of the country, not just the Mid-Atlantic. And there's times where we're going to get less snow, and property management sometimes takes a look at that and tries to hedge their bets too. But I think that we as an industry and in the snow industry, we need to take a look at capacity. We need to protect not only our business, but our people that make up our business, our people that make us a successful unit, as you guys both are testaments of. And you do that through identifying your capacity, knowing your limits, and not taking the contracts that don't work within said capacity. And to Mike's point, that's not always the race to the bottom. Sometimes it's the church that, trust me, I talk with some of our members in one of our peer groups, like churches are super lucrative on paper because they maybe only meet on Sundays. Maybe they only meet on Wednesday evenings for a Bible study. It doesn't take a whole lot of capacity to get out there, but it's kind of like, no offense to our HOA boards, but it's kind of like that board. They're like, okay, what's the expectation? What's the communication pattern look like? So there are some different challenges that are built in, and you want to protect, if you will, your sanity and your capacity in all those ways. So I think that's an important piece that I'm glad you bring up. And so moving on, before we jump into weather and communication, good timing here, just to say thanks to our sponsors over at Western Fisher and SnowX for continuing to support the Snow Talk podcast. Thank you for your sponsorship and support. So moving on, we'll talk a little bit about weather and communication. Big challenge here, obviously. That's the reason for this conversation is the forecast itself. The DC, the Metro, the Mid-Atlantic area is famous for the bust forecast. Just the difference between rain and 6 inches of snow can be just a few miles or a few minutes, and that's a change. How do you all react to that, and what kind of communication are you pushing out to clients as well as your team internally to respond to some of these rapid changes?
Yeah, so we do a 2-day out, a 1-day out, and a day of. So we have all of our clients on a promotion, and that includes other people that are in the community that want to be in it. That includes the building owners, the building engineers, various other people. And we do a couple of healthcare facilities. I think they have 7 or 8 names each on the list because they want everybody from the guy who's running the loading dock to one or two of their other vendors to bring in all their towels and all their medical supplies. So there are various people on the list that they want to all be in the know at the same time. So we have that master list, and we update it usually first week of December. And so 2 days out, we say, this is what the storm appears to be doing. This is what our action plan is. One day out, we're already out pre-treating. We're doing X, Y, and Z. And then the day of, we send out another, what we're doing, what's actually happening, what's actually hitting the ground. We send out a temperature graph, and we send out an action plan. So we send out two things with that. The temperature graph shows what the next 12 to 18 hours looks like temperature-wise. And then the action statement of what we're doing. We're going to plow. We're going to do X. We're going to follow up. We'll touch base in the morning before 7 o'clock or X, Y, and Z. And you send all of that out, it really calms things down because people know what you're doing. And if one person in the community doesn't get it, that might be a one-off. But when there's several people from that HOA, there's 5 or 6 names from the HOA, there's X number of people from the rehab facilities or whatever, they're all getting the same information. We started doing that several years ago, before COVID, and it really, really rocketed our customer service. They loved it. They liked it. Everybody knew what was going on. They knew what we were doing. They knew when we were going to be there. The other thing I can highly recommend to everyone listening to this, and that is, you've got to be friends with other contractors within 25 to an hour away from your shop. So roofers, plumbers, electricians, paving people, concrete people, siding people, the list goes on and on. I have a couple of people that live an hour and a half away from my market. My 2 daughters used to go to college a little over 2 hours away, and they would text me and they say, Dad, guess what? It's finally snowing. You're going to get it in an hour and a half. And darn sure, if an hour and a half later, we didn't start seeing big snowflakes. In addition to paid weather services, which are very good too as well, to a degree, you need to have boots on the ground, people that you can call, other contractors, say, hey, your shop's way out there. Hey, what are you guys seeing? X, Y, Z. Oh, it just started here, Mike. It's coming your way, or whatever. That's valuable information to have the night before the day of. Hey, it stopped out here. It's already turned to rain. Rain's away. That information is really good to have. It's quicker than the paid weather services. It's quicker than the local news or whatever. Your friends who are snow kind of people are telling you what's going on 30, 45. Like I can call Steve and say, okay, Steve, it just stopped here. It's going it's going to be stopping in your direction in 35 to 45 minutes. I can give Steve a heads up. He's on the other side of the river than I am. So those kind of networks and those kind of relationships in the middle of a snowstorm are pretty darn valuable because they're real-time communication and not, fake news, as they would say.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely valuable to have those people out there. Like Mike said, a couple miles can make a difference. And depending on which way the storm's coming, and normally it's coming from the west, out to the eastern cross, so he'll get it before we're going to get it. He probably has a little bit more heat effect, with all the buildings there than we do out here in some areas. But we're pretty darn close there. And the other thing I'd like to add is being close with some other contractors around you too. You might get in a bind, and you might need a hand on there. They're not your enemy. I mean, you guys are out there to do a job, everybody, to get it done. And, we have a couple that we can call on, or they can call on us if we need something, and just trade back and forth on there. And it works well. We had another company that kind of got in a bind last year with a few things. We had a little extra capacity at the end, and we're glad to help them out on there. So, definitely make friends with some of those other companies, your local contractors. And, hopefully you already are within the green industry, because we also trade work back and forth too. It might not be a good fit for us, but we know, hey, this is a good fit for this company, So just because they're your competition does not mean they're your enemy.
Point well taken, Steve. Good point there. And I funny enough, you mentioned earlier, or somebody mentioned earlier, how, it's a make or break market. I might have even mentioned it. And I got to thinking, when these big storms do come, though, it's got to be a win to have a local network that you can kind of say, hey, I took on this work. It's not that I don't have the capacity, but maybe I've got 2 guys out sick or what have you, that just, or two trucks that have a part that is just 2 weeks behind. So, what can you do to be ready? It's having a network. So given that this region, might not have the most consistent snowfalls, may not look like a Buffalo or Minneapolis, which I know Minneapolis folks who listen to this are going to say, well, we haven't had much snow the last couple of years either. But of course, it demands a certain level of professionalism. I think that's the takeaway here. Preparedness, client communication, and education. You both mentioned this level of transparency with partners as well as your customers. And that's what's going to separate the pros from the panicked when that big storm does hit. So before we close, any quick tips you'd share for contractors in this market or in a similar market? I mentioned the BC area over in the Pacific Northwest, someone who's listening to this, or last year, the southern part of the U.S. got all kinds of snow, and there are no true snow contractors, I think, down there. But there are some folks that are getting in the ice work out there. So what would you say to someone who's in a similar market, low snowfall, unpredictability, lack of stability? How would you respond, and what would be kind of your final tip for them as we round out today's podcast?
I think you got to see if it fits into your business model. Let's start there. Like, do you have that, I'm going to say, disposable cash up front to buy that equipment to be able to sit on it if you don't need it? Because you might not need it for a while. You might not need it for a couple years on there. And like Mike said, maybe make some friends with some other contractors a little bit closer. Maybe you need a couple extra skid steers for a parking lot. And, the excavating company isn't doing anything this winter. They're going to be sitting if the ground's frozen, or whatever the other company may be. You guys can work together and make that work. So without a huge investment on your part, without a huge investment on their part, since they already have some of the equipment. So I think that could benefit there. And training and just knowing out there and educating your clients on their expectations. That's a huge deal there. Like Mike said, communication, that's everything, especially in today's world. There's really no excuse why you can't communicate something to a client with all the avenues out there to do that with. From email to text messages to social media, any of those things out there. I mean, there are tons of it. And also, training your guys on things there. Like I said, Sam has a great training program. I can't speak enough about, a lot of the videos and training stuff on there. You guys have done a phenomenal job as far as that goes. And it's very helpful for us and even show some of our team on there. And, we do, site plans, site visits on things there and maps and, secondary locations. So those are some of the things I don't think that every contractor thinks about. They just think, oh, go plow it. Well, did you cover the storm drain up? Did you bury the fire hydrant? Did you, not shovel out the handicap spot? I mean, those are all important things that you need to do.
Yeah, and things that might be forgotten if it's been 2 or 3 years that you've not had a snowfall. Again, sounds common sense, but those are the ways that we clean up the act, right?
Kind of in my closing thoughts, I'm a numbers guy, through and through mostly, but I think, about 2014, 2015, we just started really trying to, not overpromise. And we scaled back our snow a little bit, during that time period. We realized what we can handle, what we couldn't handle. And we tried to develop more full service clients, pre-treat, sidewalks, loaders, the plowing, the grounds maintenance. We tried to put into a full service contract. And so my philosophy to that would be to measure it, map it, and then manage it. And in so much in this industry, so many people overpromise and they don't deliver good results. It trashes the industry, and it's really kind of tainted part of the snow and ice industry. That in a truck, the one guy in a truck who goes out there and does a bunch of damage and gives us all a bad name. But I would say to everybody listening to this, basically take a moment to measure your properties, map them out so you know exactly where you're stacking and plowing. And like we just had a conversation in our office 2-3 days ago, updating all the maps for this coming season. And then once you have everything mapped and measured, you can figure out what your capacity is and determine what you're really strong at and what you're weak at. And do not bite off more than you can chew. And that's been kind of our through and through lately. So once all the properties are measured, you know how many square footage, and then you know how much salt you need, you know how many plow trucks you need, you know how many labor hours it is per rotation. your maps are clean. Like and Steve just said a second ago, people call in sick and you need help from other vendors. You can send them a clean map. Hey, here's the map of the property. Tells you what to do, what not to do. All that kind of behind the scenes stuff. It's not easy. It's a pain in the neck to do. But once it's done and it's in place, you can really move forward with numbers and cautiously become a more profitable company and not go grab everything that comes down the pike and just trash yourself and trash your bank account in the meantime. That's a hard lesson to learn. I'm telling you right now, none of that's easy. It takes a while. No one wants to measure. No one wants to do it. No one wants to put it all together. But down the road, it made us a much better company. We know exactly what we need per round, amount of labor hours, how much liquid we need per round, how much salt we need, everything. And it's helped us out quite a bit. So, sometimes it's better to step back, slow down, retool just a little bit, and come out of the gate swinging for the pitches that you want, not everything that's coming at you.
Yeah. And with the maps, when you present that to a client who's never had that before, they're just like, wow, like, why didn't our previous vendor do this for us? Why didn't they come out and stake the parking lot without being told? Or why didn't they just do it, automatically? And we never thought like, oh, we shouldn't have plowed it in front of the dumpster. Like they used to do this and they used to do that. Like when you have that map, it's all explained and your crews know. And like Mike said, if you have to give it to a subcontractor, it's all right there and take a lot more up front, but it's worth it in the end.
Someone's got to own it too, Evan. That's I know a lot of companies struggle with this. I'm super passionate about snow. I love it. Everybody in my company knows I love it. My kids know I love it. Everyone knows Mike loves snow. I got my I love snow sign behind me back. Great. So, but someone's got to own it and be passionate about it and be the cheerleader for it. That changes a lot of things in the company. If everyone's pissed off about it, no one wants to do it. Everyone's bitching about it. That creates a little bit of a toxic culture. So find that person who likes it, enjoys it, is passionate about it, and help launch your company in a good direction, at least for it seasonally. That helps a lot too as well.
I appreciate it, guys. I really do. I think that you've both given the audience in the Mid-Atlantic that may be listening today, as well as across the U.S. and Canada, where they may have maybe a little more sporadic of a snow market. You've given some great advice. Mike, Steve, thank you for joining us for this final episode of the 2025
Thanks for having
year.
us.
Yeah, you're welcome. This episode, if you're listening, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And until next time, stay safe, stay ready, and keep pushing forwards.